Hello, hello. Before we get started, I wanted to sort of go over a fix for, or in the tutorial. It seems that somewhere between either the version of Houdini we were using in class and the newer one, or maybe the older one I was using when I first did this file, there was a change in how the poly extrude works. So just so that we go over that and we understand what's going on, let's just go ahead and start this with the original circle. And in the instructions, when I put the poly extrude on, I used an inset, and it said negative 0.5 inset. Okay, so for whatever reason, that seemed to work there, and some of the people in class that actually worked for. But for some reasons, for others, it didn't, and they had to use the distance to extrude out, which when I was on my own computer within class, I had to use the distance as well. So you can see right here, that's what this looks like. If you run into that, if you're working online and you're running into a problem, you need to go ahead and you may have to use the distance instead of the inset. Now, if that happens, also what's happening is that this output front doesn't seem to be working correctly. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to, when you finish doing the inset properly, or the distance properly, I should say, and then doing the divisions, is that you'll want to hit S in the viewport and then hit 4 so you can select the faces. And, oh, I see that. Just put that in the, apparently I highlighted that. So just hit in the viewport without anything selected over there, hit S and 4, and then you can select this face and just hit delete and it will blast it away. So that's what this blast is. So right here, you can see if I turn that on, it's just blasting polygon 0, which is the first polygon that was created. So after that, you can start doing the rest of the tutorial. All right, everybody, I'm redoing this video because anybody that was in class knows that the tool that I was using got borked. Might have been my fault. I might have hit the wrong button because I know I did actually accidentally hit a key, and that's when things went haywire. So I probably activated something I shouldn't have, and everything broke. But the second time I did it, it worked. But we're going to do this clean one more time. But I also had a problem that's going on with the texture seam, and I played around with it a lot to try to fix it, and I found what seems like a workaround, but it's kind of a strange workaround. I would rather not have to do this. I actually think it's a bug in Houdini, because in Houdini's UV tools, they have some UV tools that say fix border seam or something like that, and when you hit that button, it goes ahead and like moves the UVs over. I think they know it's a problem, and so that they had like a little addendum fix to it in some of their nodes, but I think I'm running into that little problem here. So we'll talk about it a little bit. Obviously, we've gone through some of these in these different nodes in the tutorial. Obviously, scatter's self-explanatory. The one thing about the length that I want you guys to be aware of is that what's going on here is you're getting a measurement to each point based on the center of the world. So we look at this, the center of the world, out to each point. Okay, so think of it as like an arrow. So that's the vector going out to each point. We're taking that vector, and we're taking, all of them start at 1, and then they're somewhere between 1 and 1.5, all the points. And so we're taking that vector that goes between 1 and 1.5, and we're remapping it to 0 to 1 so that we could use it with a ramp, or we could just, use it to keep pushing or adding a value to it, so it sort of like kind of moves from the center of the world out. And that's what we're using to drive these noises that look like they're kind of starting from the center and moving outwards. Okay, so if I was to go ahead and hit play here, this is a bad example. Of course I'd show you that one. Let's go ahead and show the one I'm actually on. Let's go like that. Okay, so if I hit play here, you can see it looks like the noise is pushing from the center out, and that's because we're using that vector that's measuring to each point. We're using that position, and then we're adding to it with the add node inside of here, and that's pushing it outwards, and we're using that as our Y dimension. So it just keeps like passing from the center towards outwards, and it just goes on forever, if you will. and then this noise is it's passing this noise over. So you're getting the X and Y, or I should say the X and Z deformation normally from this noise. So it's taking the point position and it's moving the X and Z, but then the Y, it's like basically passing that outwards over the points. And so take that concept as you go along and see if you can use that in other areas. All right. Okay, so those all get added together. The ramp is pretty self-explanatory. The ramp has to have it 0 to 1 to work correctly, because that's where the color range is from 0 to 1 as far as RGB goes. So it needs to be from 0 to 1 to put a ramp on it. We can see the ramp here. And then we can see this is that extra add input that we had. That's right here, that one. And that's what's pushing outwards. So think of an arrow just constantly moving outwards. And so this noise just keeps passing over the surface and over the surface. And it sort of looks like it's almost like rolling in on itself in a sense. But it's really just pushing the noise constantly outwards. And the noise is procedural, so it just keeps regenerating different noise as it goes over it. So that's how we get this effect. And we pretty much have sort of the same thing for most of these. This is how this one looks. We go into here, and the difference with this one was that I'm just taking the vector, I'm increasing its value by multiplying 10 by it, and then I'm just mixing two colors together, and I'm using this noise going over it as the bias, okay? And I just have the noise set up differently. That's why it just looks more streaky. And so if we just look at this one alone, it looks more streaky. That's just because the noise is set up differently. So, I mean, the values of the noise are just set up differently, that's all. And I just got a streaky value. And you play around with these different numbers that we promoted, and you're going to get different values and different looks. And you should mess around. You should see what you can get. You know, the idea is to play around until you get something you really like, and then maybe we'll render that. All right. So, all right, let's go on to the next one. These are self-explanatory. So this one, all we did for this one was add the noise to it. Ooh, it's slowing down. Let's go ahead and let's jump to this one. This one I probably got more points on. I just heard my computer rev up. It's like, no! Let's do this. Let's lower the points. There we go. Okay, so you can see. All right, that's how it should be moving. And I think I used the curl noise. Is that what this one? Yeah, this is the one where I used the curl noise. Just a different noise. You can tell it has different shape to it than some of these other ones do. So this trail is where the magic's happening. So it's adding in velocity, and you can see that if you go like that. There you go. There's the velocity kind of mixing and looking kind of cool, like watery. And then we jump into here, and we're coloring the points based on the velocity. So the areas that you're seeing that turn white, you can kind of see like you get these little flashes of white in there. Those areas, let's look at the whole thing here. Let's see here. I thought there was a ramp on this. There is a ramp on this. Where is my ramp up there? Okay, I wonder if Houdini is having another issue. Maybe it's collapsed. Maybe I can't see it. So my ramp's not showing up. Probably, like, just need to... I'll tell you what. Stop it. There it is. I figured. Okay, so sometimes when you change something, when you're in the middle of playing, like, it borks things up. You got to stop the timeline and restart it. That was what it was. Just took me a second to remember. This area right here, if you see this light area in the ramp, the lightest area all the way to the right, that's the area that is moving the fastest. So let's just explain this really quick. So you're getting the length of the velocity, and again, we're fitting it. Now, how did I fit it? I went into my geometry spreadsheet and go ahead and find like the different general lengths. Now, if I wanted to get really exact, I could go through here and find out which frame has the highest, velocity and map. I could even map like the X, Y, and Z separately into different fits and have it so they're refitting perfectly between each one. I didn't want to do that, so I just kind of got a general number, and it's working. And then, of course, we're remapping to 0 to 1 because that's what the ramp will work on. And then, voila, we have this effect. And, of course, you can probably see it a little bit more. differently if we, something like that. Maybe get rid of that one. Let's try this. There we go. Kind of like that. So we hit play now. So anywhere where it's going a lot faster, it starts to turn white. So it's kind of like in and out based on where the noise is traveling over it. The velocity will pick up. All right. So basically where the most deformation change happens at the fastest rate, that's where the velocity will pick up. And then I have a okay, so I was doing render, so I put an attribute wrangle on here. This isn't in the original instructions, but just to explain it, what I have is it's saying v at v, which is the vector at the velocity, equals v at v times, and then I'm multiplying it by a number because I wasn't getting enough motion blur in the render. So to get more motion blur in the render, this is one way that you can increase the velocity so it'll seem like they're moving faster. Another way to do it is through the camera. You can have the camera shutter basically be like open longer, and then that causes like a more motion blur look. That's just like in real life if you're using a camera. Should work basically the same. Okay, so that's what that is, and I put one of those over here too, so when we get into this chain, it's the same thing. I'm just actually decreasing the velocity because this other chain, the velocity was too much, and it was like blurring all over the place and it didn't look right. So anyway, so let's get into this last chain because that was the one that was the kind of the special, if you will. Okay, I deleted some stuff because there was issues going on, but what I'm going to do is, see, I have another chain over here where I did the same thing. I'm going to delete, let's just do this first. I'm going to go Y, and then we're going to delete these. And so this right up here is just our original circle, and then our original poly extrude. If I can get in closer there, poly extrude. I have a light on there, that's why you're seeing this like highlight come up. I could actually probably, let's see, will that turn that off? Lighting components. Yeah, you can start turning the light off, but I'm just going to leave it on for now. I don't think it'll bother you too much. I've got this poly extrude on there. Now, what was strange was in class, or in the directions, it said to use the inset, and I think when I did it at home, I said I was doing it on an older version. I started this file on an older version, but then I updated it, and I think at home I'm on the newest version of Houdini, which let me do the inset the way I wanted to, and the distance didn't work. But since that's not working on this version of Houdini, you might have to do it with the distance instead of the inset. But if it's the inset, it's negative 0.5. If it's the distance, it's just 0.5. So it's just going 0.5 off the edge of the object. And so then what you can see there, the result is, let me hit W for wireframe. You're going to get something like that, but we still, for whatever reason, this output front then doesn't work the same either. So I think there was a bug that they fixed between versions. And so in this version, if you're using the older, like the Houdini 2 or Houdini 18.287, I think is what it is. If you're using that version, you have to come in here, hit 3 on your keyboard, hit, oh, that was the wrong thing. Actually, I'm sorry. Take that back. Hit 1 on your keyboard to get back if you need to get your perspective view. Hit S on your keyboard, then hit 4, and then you can select this poly in the middle. You should select it. I don't know. It looks like it has a bunch of them selected. It should just be 1, and then hit delete. And then, oh, I see why, because this thing was still flagged. Okay, so you hit delete, and then that's a blast, and then it's gonna, you'll have your geometry the right way. Let's turn on the wireframe so we can see the geometry. Okay, so now we're ready to start unwrapping. All right, so I'm going to change my viewport because I have a viewport set up. If you want to change your viewport manually, you can go like this. You can go split plane left and right or top and bottom. For this one, I think I'm going to do left and right. And then over here, I am going to change this to UV viewport. So here we go. I've got the 2 viewports working side by side. So if I need to select something in 3D, I do it in the one. If I need to select it in the UV editor or the UV workspace, I do it in the second one. So that's how that would work. And then we're going to want a UV flatten. So let's just get that. Flatten. Okay, first thing I want to do is one of the tools that we're going to use only works in the angle base. So I'm going to grab that first and change this to angle based. And just be aware that the UVs work on the vertices. So we will promote them later up to the point so we can get them into the point bot. Otherwise, it doesn't seem to let the UVs come in properly for a texture. It seems like I can do UV stuff without textures, like with noises. That seems to work in the point bot. But when it comes to an actual using a texture map on it, it seems not to work if you don't do the promotion. So that's what my experience has been with it. Okay, so we've got the UV flatten, and let's highlight that right there, flag it, and we can see what it's doing. And the first thing we're going to do is we should be getting some tools in here. Strange, the tools are over here, and I want them over here. I'm going to actually, let's just swap this around. I'll make that my UV viewport, and I'll make this one my perspective. That should be fine. Yeah, that should be fine. Okay. And so now that I got this as my UV viewport, I can see my tools here. The first tool I'm going to want to select is the cut tool. And so what this is going to do is wherever I select edges, it will cut those edges. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just hold Shift A and middle mouse on the edge that I want to cut. And so what we're going to do is we're going to cut up kind of like the donut shape so that we can lay the thing out so it's a flat type of shape, and then we can pass UVs over it and stuff like that. So, or UVs, sorry, they are UVs. We can pass a texture over it, so it will tile and stuff like that. Okay, so I'm gonna just hold Shift A, middle mouse, and then you'll see a green seam will come up there automatically, and that should be good. I'm just gonna hit enter, so I'm good. And then the next step that we're gonna do is this straighten tool. So it's align vertices in U or V direction. So if I click on that, all of a sudden this changes, and then the next thing to do is you can select one vert. So I just click on it, and then I hold Shift A and middle mouse click on the vert right next to it, and it'll grab the whole loop of verts going all the way around the object, and then just hit enter, and it'll straighten it out. Now, if you weren't using the angle base, I don't believe this works as well. So I think it actually works, but it's not exactly the same. This works better. Now, it definitely straightened it out, but it's not straight on all sides. So what I'm going to do is the same process, and I'm going to select one, and I'm going to hold Shift A, select, and middle mouse button select the next one, and then hit enter, like so, and it'll start straightening that side out. And actually, see here, I missed one, so I'm going to do this again right here, and I'm Shift A, middle mouse click right there, and hit enter. So that should be all straightened out. I actually saw the vert, if you looked really closely, it did move a tiny bit, so it was a little bit off. So do the same thing here, Shift A, middle mouse click, and then enter. And you want to do it right on the edge. Why didn't that work? Let's do it one more time. Shift A, there we go. I guess it didn't select it the first time. Hit enter, there we go. So you want to do it on the top corners, and you want to get it all the way from the top to the bottom. So if you don't, it will not actually move all those. And actually, in my document that I sent with this, I did put an edit note in there, and that was the mistake that I made. The other time was I grabbed like one off of the seam, and I didn't get the whole thing to straighten out. So I had to fix it later. So here, now we can do the horizontal. So I'll just grab here, Shift A, middle mouse click, and then hit enter. And you'll see it straightens it, so that's nice and straight. And then we can come all the way down here, do the same thing down here, and then we'll have our UVs all straight. Shift A, middle click, enter, and see everything straightens out, and that's good. Okay, what's happening now is we have all of our UVs. They're outside of the 0 to 1 space, and we're wanting to pack them into the 0 to 1 space. So I'm going to go ahead and hit repack, and it's just going to move it into the 0 to 1 space. And then I want to rotate these because the direction that I want is I want the inside of the tube to basically be at the bottom of the UVs. Now that I think about it, you could probably do this either way. You could probably have it on the side where it's at, or you could have it at the bottom, and then you're just passing the UVs over, or I'm sorry, you're passing the texture over the UVs, and as long as the tile texture, it should kind of keep looping, okay? Now, I did find a seam problem, but like I said, I think that's a Houdini issue, not my issue, because I know my tile textures are good. I've checked them and double-checked them and stuff. So the next thing would be a UV transform. Oh, tab, UV transform, enter. And then from here, you can start rotating it like so. And let's highlight it so we can only see the one. And then we can see that is the Z rotation. So we'll just hit 90, like so. And then I know I need to translate it about 1 over, so I hit 1 there, and it should move it over. Let's see, is there a repack in here? I don't think there is. All right, I was just seeing if there's any tools in here I didn't notice before. There is not, and so the next thing I'm going to do is I already scaled this a few times, so I know what the scale needs to be. If you've done everything the same as I've done it, everything's exactly the same, it should be scaling it on, I believe, the X at 15.5. You do that, and it'll pop right into place, and we should be good. Now, you'll notice that I'm pretty much perfectly aligned. So this is, you can see this over a little bit on the top there. So if I wanted to, I can just kind of pull that down right on the edge there. But on the sides, I'm good. So on the left and right, I'm good. And that's where we're going to be. So this is what's going to happen is that this here is the seam that I cut this way. So the seam in the V direction is the seam that I cut across here. Okay, how do you know that? You can do this. You can come into here, hit S, and just start selecting stuff. And let's do it on the points or the verts. So let's go 1, S1. Okay, S2. There we go. Is this showing up? Let's do this. Okay, I've had this happen before where for some reason it wasn't showing in this viewport. Let me see something here. It's almost like it's acting independent. So we'll do it like this. And then we'll go like this. There we go. Okay, so what I can see is that I'm actually got my UVs facing the wrong direction. They actually need to be rotated. So I actually set it up incorrectly. So for what I'm looking for, I set it up incorrectly. So like I said, I want the inside here to be at the bottom. So all I have to do now is that I can just come into here. Actually, I think if I just zero this out, that might fix it. Although we actually need to, I think it's a 180. And I typed in 190. 180. There we go. And then I'll just move it 1 up in the Y, and then we're back where we want to be. Okay, so just double check here, make sure I got it right. And perspective view. Oh, so actually I don't have it right. This is why we double check. So we go like this. You can see. Okay, so actually what I want to be doing is it needs to go this way, like that. So 270 actually is probably where I need it, and then that means that this translate is unnecessary. Okay, there we go. Okay, got it. Finally. I bet there's a way to programmatically do this in Houdini. I have done procedural UVs, but I didn't have time to go into the full research on how to procedurally lay this out this way. So I'm just doing it by hand, which is kind of the old school method. And it's good to know the way to do stuff by hand in case you just need to go in and brute force fix something really, really fast. So that's what I just did. All right, so we got that in place. We're all right now. All right. And the next thing we're going to want to do is that I'm just going to basically bypass these were my original ones. So for now, I'll just delete all those, and I'll delete this UV edit. And so we've got this attribute promote. And we're going to take the UVs and the vertices of the UVs, and we're going to promote it up to the points. Like I said, it seems to work with the procedural noises in Houdini. It seems like you don't have to promote these, but if you're taking a texture map in, for whatever reason, I don't know why, you have to promote up to the points. So I'm just going to drag this and tie it in. Okay, so let's see what we got here. So that's the promote. And then I have a subdivide here just so I can make it look more, pretty and see the deformation better. But I'm going to leave it off right now because it just kind of slows things down. And then we'll go in and turn this on. Now, you'll see it popped up because my, what do you call it? The displacement seems to push the whole thing up no matter what. So even though it does work the way I want, it actually makes the thing bigger. So I actually have to physically translate it down later. So let's go ahead and we'll go back to this layout. And okay, it's got that. All right, so let's just go ahead and go. We want. No, that's not what we want. I want to do away with that. This is what we want. Okay. Now, for some reason, okay, if you're getting these points and they don't seem to go away, just hit S again, and you could hit something like 4, and you should be able to turn them off. Then you just basically have to turn on a different, or turn off selection is basically what you have to do. Okay, so let's go into here. You know what, one thing I want to do though is I do have this facet I threw in here, and this is just for the looks. So if you turn the facet to post compute normals and you leave this flag but you're working in here, then you can see it looks a lot better. So it's just, you're not getting those hard facets, and I can see, what's going on in here. And let's find out if I've got that seam that I had before. So I was getting this weird seam, and it's strange because certain textures it didn't seem to show up much, and then certain textures it really showed up. And I can tell where it's at. It's right here. You can kind of see it right there. So now I did strangely find a way to get rid of it, and that was by taking my UVs and actually doubling the width. I'm not sure why. I'm just telling you that it worked. I was playing with different things to try to get rid of it, and I was like, what happens? I tried taking the texture and like doubling the texture width and shrinking the textures and stuff like that. And I just tried a bunch of stuff because I was like, what's the deal with this? But it seemed like when I doubled the width, it got rid of it, which again makes me think that the problem is something in Houdini. It's a bug. All right, because here, let me show you. So if I turn on this subdivide and I go back into here, here, you can see it even worse. Like it's because now that we have more deformation there, you can say, oh yeah, that doesn't look right. And if we pass this over there, see, that doesn't look good at all. But if I go back to my UVs, like my transform, and I take this, and let's say I double this, so I can say, we can just go ×2. Well, that time it didn't work. Let's see, what are we getting here? Did I go the wrong direction? I did. I went the wrong direction, so that's not gonna work. There we go. That's what we want, is actually in the Y direction. Yep, that's what we want. So I just took this and I went 2. Now it's not giving me the noise response that I want exactly, but somehow it gets rid of the seam. So go figure. Let's go back over here. Let's up this subdivide one more, and it's gonna get slow. Yeah, here we go with Houdini. It worked the first time I did it, and now I'm looking at it and going, that ain't working. That is not what I did before. Let's double check this. Or I should say, that is not how it worked before. The first time I did it, it worked fine. Now you can see there is an opening on each of these. I have even fixed that, and it still didn't fix anything. So it actually made it worse when I went ahead and made this go all the way to the edge. Don't ask me again. I think it's a bug. So this time it's not working, and I've had times where it did work. Welcome to my life with Houdini. Houdini's great. I'm not knocking it. I love Houdini, but there are times where it is a royal pain. Let me turn this down. It's trying to go in, and there's so many subdivide stuff on it that it's bogging. Let's go back to the original thing that I had there, and let's make sure the facet's on. Okay, so I'm still getting this bug. Okay, now here's a strange thing. So I changed a lot of my noises. I was playing around with the noises. This noise, let me pull it up. This 4K noise right now looks like this. Okay, so this doesn't look that bad in there, but we still get that seam right there. If I change this to my original noise that I used, where is it? There, it's popping up down there. My original noise was this one. Look at that. You don't see a seam. Why not? No seam. Bug. That's all I gotta say. It's not me. It's the machine. All right, so it should be working fine. I mean, by theoretically, any program you do this in, like if the UVs are working correctly, it should be working fine. I don't know what the bug is. I wonder if I change back, it might like all of a sudden update and do it right or something. I don't know. Let's see here. Nope, it's still showing up a weird seam. And I'm telling you, it's not in the texture because I've tested the textures. The textures are good. All these textures were basically made the same way, and they all worked. They all worked fine until, or I shouldn't say they all worked fine. This one worked fine, and then when I started doing other ones in there, it just got weird. Don't ask. So you can see right here. Now let's just do something really quick. Let me turn this UV transform back to 1. Okay, so even with that back to 1, it seems to work fine. You don't see any seam in there. How strange. How strange. And just to double check that I'm in the right spot, you don't see a seam anywhere. Something about this texture is magic, I guess. I don't know. Okay. You got me. I'm not sure what's going on, but it seems like there's times I put it in there and it works, and then there's times I put it in there and it shows a seam. So that's why I know it's a bug. Anyway, so let's just go ahead and just move on. I know I've kind of beat this with a dead horse, but what's happening here is we're taking this UV position node, we promote the translate so we can go ahead and animate that. So I've got like a $F something something in there. It's in the document, and let's go over here. This is my displacement texture, and I have that feeding into this displacement node right here. And it's in the amount, and then I'm getting the displacement position. And then I'm coming up here and putting that into the add. Now, I'll also, at some point, drop in the actual noise too, so I get both of these working together. So you can get an interesting effect. Let's move that down. And then I have the ramp being mixed with this texture map. So if you go and break this, look at the texture map. Now this is a noise that was made, actually I have a different one in there now. I made another one in Substance Designer, which actually worked really good, and it was like super easy to make, but it still had the seam. Whereas the first one I made for some reason doesn't have the seam. I wish I could figure that part out. But anyway, this is another map that I made, but the first one I made looked like, let's just show it, stretched color like this. So it would look like that. And then that I have going into a mix. It's mixing with that with a ramp, and then the bias is the displacement map I'm using. So basically the black and white of the displacement map is the bias. So whatever's white will show input 1, and whatever's black will show input 2. So when I go ahead and just string this back in, you can see there's a blend there. So it's blending both maps together, or the ramp and the color map. And then we add this in, and it, like I said, it blows it up kind of big. That kind of looks cool. I think that looks really cool. Now we're not using the geo itself as the end product. We're actually using the scatter. So we get to this facet, which you don't really need anymore. I could probably just shut that off, it won't matter. And then we get to the scatter, and then the scatter scattering the points over it. So there you go. There's the points scattered over the surface. Looks pretty cool. The transform makes it smaller so that it matches up with this original one, so that they're basically layered on top of each other. And then the trail's giving it the velocity, so it's compute velocity. And then I have that, like I mentioned before, the attribute wrangle. So that's an explanation of what's going on there. It's going to be a little bit tricky. If you're getting into those UV seam problems, don't sweat it too hard. Like I said, bug. In fact, because I have the newer version at home and I didn't get this problem, I'm going to guess that the bug's in Houdini 18.287. That's probably where it's at. Okay, that's it for this one. If you need, you can watch there's a Houdini tutorial made by Side Effects that shows how to use the UV tool, and that will help you. It shows other stuff that I didn't show, but what I showed is what you'll need to get that part done. Let's see if I have a render up here at all. So the render that I have going on so far kind of looks like that, as far as just a single frame. Actually, it looks even better when I think I had it, like if you almost really never use it like at the default render. You're going to take it into post and you're going to go ahead and put like, saturation and glow on this stuff and layer things together, and then you get some kind of cool looking effect. So that's basically it, and thanks for watching, and happy particling. It's a word. It is. Trust me.